Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Pastor Email here. Welcome to another episode of the Podcast Room. Thank you so much for all those who have been supporting, those who have been hanging out with us in these weeks for our conversations. We are greatly appreciative of you. Let's remember that we need you to like, comment, share, hit that bell so you're notified every single time that we have a conversation so you can stay in the loop. If you have not checked out our last conversation, The Culture Room, go back and listen to it. I think you will enjoy it. I am in the podcast room today with a very special guest. Well, my list came out just now. Very special guest. He is a giant in the kingdom. He's a preaching machine. One of my brothers in the kingdom. Super excited. Put your hands together and welcome for the first time. And depending on how he does, this may not be his only time. If he doesn't do well, he won't be back. And I think that's just fair. Pastor Jaleel Spence is here with
What's up, man?
What is going on? How you feel, Pastor? It's been a while since
It's been a minute. What has it been like?
Probably about 2 years because he's been dodging my text messages.
A year and a half. Okay. A year and a half since you brought me here. We had an amazing time.
Yeah, it was a long time.
We had a great time. I'm glad to be here, man. And you're not the only one with a lisp tonight, so, you know. Peas in a pod, all right? No pun intended. Peas in a pod.
All right, so I want to get right into, you've been preaching for a minute, right? How long have you been preaching?
I've been preaching since I was, all my life I've been preaching. I come from a family of preachers, so I've always had that desire to be the young boy, the prodigy, taking graduation robes, running around the house preaching, preaching in the shower.
Preaching in the shower, yeah, the mirrors.
All that stuff. Yeah. That was definitely me. I officially started preaching at age 16.
Okay, gotcha.
I was in 11th grade. I'm almost 30.
Wow.
So I've been at it for about a good 13, 14 years so far.
Got you.
And it's been a journey.
Got you.
It's been a journey.
Where did you grow up as far as church-wise?
Church-wise, I grew up Baptist. Okay. A lot of people laugh when they hear that because they say I don't act it, but I did grow up Baptist. You definitely
preach it though, I think.
Do
no?
I?
Yeah, I think so.
I accept. They're the best. The Baptist preachers, listen, there's something special. They're
going to give it to you all.
There's something special about a Baptist preacher.
I believe that, yeah.
But I was trained by an apostolic preacher, which is crazy.
Okay.
However, I did grow up in a Baptist church. A lot would consider that to be my family church. Currently, my aunt is the pastor of that church.
Okay.
My grandmother came out of there. She was a preacher. Mm-hmm. My aunt's a preacher. Cousins are preachers. And so I was there from birth up until maybe age 17.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. In 2011, I accepted what they call the call to preach.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Although I had accepted it at an even younger age, I officially accepted it at that age. And I started preaching. And then it was like as soon as I started preaching, the Lord shifted me.
Okay.
The Lord shifted me rapidly, and he connected me to a man by the name of Eric McDaniel. Shout out to the Bronx. Shout out to Bishop Eric McDaniel, the Lord's Church.
All two people from the Bronx. Put your comments right. All two people.
We'll only accept that tonight. That's the only Bronx shot we'll accept tonight. And I initially didn't even connect with Bishop McDaniel out of preaching engagement opportunity.
Okay.
I connected with him because there was an oil that was on his life that my soul needed.
Wow.
Not just my preaching ability, but my soul needed it.
Yeah.
My emotions needed it.
How did you recognize that you needed that?
Can I be very honest? I was watching the man on YouTube.
Okay.
And while I was watching the man on YouTube, something jumped out at me and said, "You got to meet that man."
Okay.
The circuit that my family comes from is not really a part of the circuit that
he would be running.
He was a part of.
Gotcha.
So it was two completely different worlds, and I came upon him by accident. And the Lord told me very clearly. He said, "You've got to connect with that man." And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I was just out of high school. Mm-hmm. In fact, no, I was still in high school when I met him because I connected with him long before I went to his church. I was in high school when I met him. And the moment we connected in Harlem at an open mic on a Monday night, and I happened to be there. And he walked in, and I was like,
yeah, well,
these are the early days of YouTube, folks. So, everything wasn't the way it is today.
Right.
And I introduced myself. I reached out to him. We began communication. And within a year and a half of our connection, the Lord told me that I was designated to be under his leadership.
Okay.
And that in order for me to reach the next level of where I was going, I had to be connected to an oil that had been where I wanted to go.
Okay. Was that welcoming? Was that scary? Was that like, where were you after you heard? Because that's clear instruction, but sometimes the clearest instruction from God is sometimes the scariest.
It's all of the above, Emil, in the sense that the Lord will give you an instruction that is opposite of your surroundings.
Yes, God, man. Yeah.
That the Lord would give you a directive that is the antithesis of your environment.
Yeah.
And so how do I, putting myself back in my shoes all those years ago, tell my family that I'm leaving, that the Lord is calling me on? Now, I don't know the kind of church you grew in, but I grew in a church where if you were born there, you stay there, you serve there, you work there, you labor there,
you die there,
you build there. There's a phrase that's used to describe it called bloom where you are planted.
Okay.
Meaning if you've been planted here, this is where you bloom. You don't uproot yourself and go somewhere else. And so now I've been given an instruction which I have no paradigm for. I have nobody to compare it to.
Right.
I don't know anybody that's ever been in this situation.
Right.
And for months, I was wrestling with myself. I continued to serve. I was a youth pastor.
Okay.
At the age of 17 years old, I was a youth pastor in my home church. And the Lord is telling me there's something else for you. There's something else for you. And I had to make the decision that either I wanted the future that I knew God spoke to me, or I wanted to remain comfortable. And I was willing to make the step. And I think sometimes when we talk about transition, let's talk about that, right? When we talk about the nuances.
That's a touchy subject.
Yeah. No, seriously, because the nuances attached and associated with transition are so complex. And sometimes it aggravates me, if I'm honest, when I hear people make it simplistic.
Yeah.
There is nothing about transition that's simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every transition that you will navigate through will present you with a challenge that you've got to find the solution for.
Right.
And so as a 17-year-old,
that's
18-year-old,
yeah, that's difficult.
I'm trying to figure out, I'm leaving aunt and grandma and cousin and other aunt and this one and that one. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm going into an environment, I know no one here.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing God.
Yeah.
I'm hearing God.
And that was enough for you.
It was enough. It was enough for me to hear God, even though I was walking on a path that I didn't know what the next steps looked like.
Right.
And I made the decision. I had a very heart-wrenching conversation with my aunt.
Okay.
And I told her the Lord is calling me on. And the word she gave to me was, I knew this would happen.
Yeah.
So what it kind of proves to me is, although sometimes the next instructions we receive from God may be new to us, there are those who are a part of our story. If they're really connected to you, they'll hear God possibly before you do.
Yeah.
But your next steps are requiring your own hearing.
Wow, that's so
She
good.
couldn't tell me that.
Yeah.
I had to hear it for myself. She said, I knew it would happen.
Yeah. If she had went another way, right? If you had shared with her, God is calling me on, and she said to you, no, not yet. Are you sure? If she would have presented any pushback, what would have been your next step?
I was resolved. It was so hard for me to come to the point of the conversation.
It's interesting.
I was resolved.
Okay.
I sat there resolved. This is my aunt. We go to family reunions. We go out to everybody. And I text her like I was a stranger. Hey, can we meet on so-and-so? I was resolved.
Right, I hear
you. know, I sat there and I was resolved. And I'm pretty sure, just to be honest, it would have put my emotions more into
Yeah,
a complex
man.
state
Yeah.
had she given pushback. But I don't believe ultimately that my decision would have changed
Yeah.
because it took me so long to get to that point
Yeah.
that by the time I finally got there, I knew that I need someone who has been where I'm trying to go
Yeah.
to lead me
Yeah.
to my next
But I
level.
respect that so much because I don't think enough discussion goes into how much obstacle your emotion presents.
Oh man,
You
it's
know what I mean?
everything.
A lot of us are hearing God. A lot of us are certain that we've heard God, but our emotions hold us back from following the instructions of God. So I respect that even at a young age, 17 and 18, I would have never thought to be anywhere other than where I was. So that's a lot of courage, man.
It was hard.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel
It
you.
was difficult. But ultimately, I think all of us are presented daily with the challenge of choosing present or future. What do you want?
Here we go. He's starting early.
What do you want? What,
Yeah.
you're presented with two options. You can either stay comfortable and live with the regret of what if, or you can take a step out there. Here's the biggest thing, and I don't want to shortchange the conversation by saying this. I knew if it failed, I could go back.
Okay.
I knew if all else failed.
So did that govern your decision to take the step? Like at the end of the day, this is my family. If this doesn't work out, I can go back to family. If that wasn't an option, would that have changed the way you approach this? I'm genuinely asking. I'm genuinely asking.
No, I hear you. I don't think I'm just giving you my honest opinion. I don't think it would have changed my decision, but I can say as a fact that it made it more comfortable. It definitely made it more reassuring. Because the final words my aunt gave to me, and it caused, to be transparent, it caused friction in our family.
Okay.
Because this is the family legacy.
And churches have become so Godfather movie like, where it's just so cultish. And how can we be family?
If we go there, the conversation's going to turn.
But it is though. How can we be family if we don't go to the same church? Because we have the same blood.
Because we've essentially made church the family business.
100%.
100%. So we treat church like it's the funeral home. We treat church like it's the auto body shop, like it's the laundromat. That when dad dies, it has to go to son. Even if somebody's more qualified in the seat.
Right.
Even if there's somebody more qualified available that has served and labored.
Yeah.
So it caused conflict. But the very last things my aunt said to me in that conversation was, if you ever need to return home.
I love it.
Don't hesitate.
I love it.
And I knew she wasn't comfortable with my decision.
Mm-hmm.
I knew she didn't agree with my decision.
Mm-hmm.
I knew she might have even been a bit angry at my decision.
Mm-hmm.
But it did not stop her from saying at any point, if you feel led and you need to, come back to safety. It almost reminds me of that scripture in Judges where the angel of the Lord shows up to Gideon and says, Gideon, I want you to prove that you're in this fight with us.
Yeah.
If you're really in this fight with us, go and destroy the altar of Baal.
Yeah. Yeah.
At your father's house. And Gideon goes and he does it, and he destroys the altar of Baal, and the city is in an uproar. They're angry because how dare you? And they show up to Gideon's father's house and said, let him outside so we can kill him.
Yeah.
And Gideon's father, although he disagrees with him, says, regardless of what he's done and how you feel about his decision, he's still covered.
Yeah.
He's covered regardless of the decision. So that just takes us to an even deeper place to say, why can't we learn how to cover even in the midst of disagreement?
Yeah.
If the disagreement destroys the covering, it was never a covering.
Right. It was a control.
It was a control.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It took me all of my life to realize that. Not only that aspect, but how about the fact that if I spend time with God, God is with me. Even if I'm not here with my family at this church, perhaps God will go with me across the street to that church. Because he is not with me just because of where I am. He is with me because of who he created me to be. And as long as I stay who he created me to be, he will stay with me. How about that aspect? Right.
Regardless.
And it took me forever to realize, wait, God is not with my title. He is not with my position. He is with me. That means wherever I go, he goes with me.
So that makes us expand the idea of me. Who are me?
Yeah,
we say, who are me to judge?
Yeah.
Who are me, right? Am I just the person, as you just foresaid, that serves?
Yeah.
Whether I preach, whether I teach, whether I sing, whether I'm a content creator online. Who am I beyond what I do for him?
Yep.
And a lot of people haven't mixed up who I am and what I do. And here's the reality that I tell all those who follow me. You are more than what you do. The reality is, unfortunately, I can go through a situation today and it completely remove my voice. What I do is I minister the word of God through my mouth. If my voice is gone, does that mean that's the end of me? Impossible. There's a me beyond what I do.
Yeah.
There's a me deeper than what I do. I am the same me that I am when I'm up in the pulpit, on the stage, on a Sunday morning. I'm that same me on a Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
My functions may change.
Right.
But at my core, I'm still me. And I think if we connected to God for the me aspect instead of the what I do aspect, how many people do we know spend most of their time asking God to bless what they do instead of bless me in those internal areas that I don't really give much credence to, much attention to, right? Everything is more so about, what I do in the public eye. But what about you when the camera turns off? When the gate closes on the church? Who are you?
Right.
We have a lot of people that went mentally insane during the pandemic because they didn't know who they were beyond what they did.
Without the doors being open, And that's why the Bible says, search me. And that's what we're not asking God to do.
No.
We want him to bless what we're doing. That is so good. Listen, so you get to Bishop McDaniels, right?
Sure.
Who is he to you? And I want to shift this conversation to mentorship. Is one of the most important things to me. I'm in a really weird space with that right now, but I want to see where you are. Archbishop Brown was my dad. He is gone. I will never have another spiritual dad. That is just my take. I will have mentors. I will have instructors. He was my only father in the gospel. He will be my only father in the gospel. Much of my style of preaching, much of my style of thinking as far as ministry, that came from him. Watching him do it and wanting to almost be him as a kid.
Pause. Can we take like 5 seconds and give it up for the legend?
Absolutely.
Archbishop Roy Brown.
Actually, put a clip of him right there just preaching.
Oh, come on here, somebody talk back to me. Let me say that again. You can't get to the Father until you come through the Son. You can't ignore Jesus trying to get to Father, because the Father and the Son, they are one. Bless his name. They are one. They not only one working together, but they're one in name, in authority, in power, in spirit. Thank God for this one God.
I mean, New York City is not New York City
without Bishop Roy Brown,
without the presence of an Archbishop Roy E. Brown.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I feel like this about quite a few preachers, that the generation coming up, and by that generation, I mean like 18, 19, 20, they will never know the power of what I got to see as a kid. I sound old, but I'm not, right? Like, they will never understand the power of a Roy Brown. Beyond the pulpit,
yeah, man,
you can drive through Brooklyn and see the man's work.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. He has laid such foundation. He's laid such precedent, such path of, I know where to go because my father went, right? What was Bishop McDaniels to you? Who are you because of him? How has that mentorship helped your life, hurt your life? Where are you with that? And then let's get into how important mentorship is.
Bishop Eric McDaniel in in the opinion of Pastor Jaleel Spence, is the greatest preacher on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Make no mistake about it. The greatest preacher on planet Earth. I connected with Bishop McDaniel at maybe the age of 16, 17, like I told you previously. And when that transition finally came, I was telling him about some of my frustrations. And maybe for about a year and a half, I was telling him about frustrations. But it was one particular conversation where he said, yeah, it might be time to go. And he had never said that before. We hear so much about mentors and men who will use their influence to pull you away from something. You got to be careful of certain mentors. I don't consider them mentors, but there are individuals who will present themselves as a mentor to pull you away from where you are so that they can aid whatever they're doing. I never got that from him. I never experienced that with him. And so I believe it was the age of 17 or 18, I officially transitioned. By that time, I had already gotten a car. I had already gotten my driver's license. And the main thing I was doing was driving him around. I became an armor bearer like you've never seen before. I became an armor bearer.
Yeah, man.
I also want to say I've done everything there is to do in church except for play an instrument.
That's crazy.
I've been a sound engineer. I've been a videographer. I've been a worship leader. I've been the preacher. And in this case, I've been the armor bearer. And I didn't show up to Bishop McDaniel's church to preach.
Right.
I never even had that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed up as an armor bearer. And for the next... since then, maybe from 2000, let me put some dates on it. Maybe from 2014, 15 until 2021, I drove the man around the country. I got on flights. I got to meet whoever there was to be met through my connection to him. More importantly than who I got to meet, I learned how to preach. Now, I told you that I've been preaching all my life and I started preaching at 16, but that doesn't mean I had the mechanics.
Right.
Before I was watching him in person, I was watching him on YouTube to the point where people would invite me to preach and say, you sound just like.
Yeah.
And
was that insulting to you, or was that like, what was your reaction?
I was a little annoyed, Pastor Bell. I was a little annoyed. Because it wasn't my intention.
I hear you. Yeah.
Because it wasn't my intention, I was almost saying, are you saying I can't be me? Mm-hmm. Are you saying that I don't have my own voice? It was before I learned that you naturally exude
absolutely
the environment
absolutely
that consumes
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have to sit me down and say, hey, do this and do that.
Yeah.
One of the things I'll say about Bishop McDaniel is that he's almost like a Kobe in the sense, for anybody that watches or has watched basketball, in the sense that he just leads by example. Very few words, very few do this, do that, go here, go there. And I think there's a need for that. But his leadership style is that of leading by example.
Okay.
And so I've watched the man, I've walked into churches that had 10,000 people, literally.
Mm-hmm.
First time in my life outside of an NBA game that I've seen 10,000 people at one time.
In church, okay.
I've watched him preach to 10,000 people. And the very next day, I watched him walk into a banquet inside of a storefront church and preach to 8 people.
Yeah, man.
And when we walked out of that particular banquet, we got in the car and he said, see what I do? I can preach to thousands and I can preach to fewer of 10. And it doesn't change my presentation.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Now, I hear it often. I don't see it often.
Right, yeah.
I actually got to witness
see it. Yeah.
Right? And I don't even want to turn the conversation in another direction, but at some point we've got to talk about it's not enough to tell people or teach people. at some point we've got to model it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to model what it is that we are teaching,
right,
and what it is that we are attempting to convey. And so he, even currently, he's, like you said, Bishop Brown, although deceased, that's your only father.
Only father.
Bishop Eric McDaniel is not a mentor.
Yeah.
He's my spiritual father.
Yeah.
Right. So any moves that I've made in ministry has been met with his approval.
Yeah.
I don't make certain moves without his yes.
And if he doesn't approve, you don't. See, we're missing that, right? I always tell the story of me wanting to marry my wife, and I go to Bishop, I go upstairs, I sit down in his office, and I say, I want to marry Melissa. Melissa's my wife. He says, no, not yet. He said, I love your union. I love who you are together. He said, but you're going to be something so big, and she has got to come into the understanding of what you're going to be before she marries you.
Jeez.
And at that point, I'm nothing. I preached one time, so I'm going. So I leave out of his office boo-hooing because I wanted to marry this girl. Yeah. I wanted to marry her tomorrow.
Sure.
But I trusted my father, and I did not do it. I waited a year later. This time I got the ring. Next time I went with him, I had a ring. I said, now, if I have a ring, he's not going to say no. He started
you went to him a year later.
A year later.
And he didn't even ask you to come to him a year later.
No.
Yeah.
No. I go to him with the ring. I pull the ring out. He starts crying. He said, you are ready because you waited.
Wow.
Watch this. You're ready because you waited. He's boo-hooing, and we got married. We got engaged. And he's showing her ring off more than me. He's saying, come, look, show this boy bought this ring for this girl. But it meant so much to me that my father approved it, that my father said it was okay. And I just missed that. I personally miss that a lot now. But I don't know if this next generation will ever have that, because they have not been taught how to appreciate that which is anointed, right? I tell the guys with me all the time, you all are riding with me, not because my car is fancy, but because I'm anointed. And every time you come into a space with someone who's anointed, you should be gleaning. You should be excited. It's a privilege to be connected to, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I drove Bishop only one time. I wasn't his driver. I drove him one time. When we pulled over, he said, how long you had a license? A month ago. He said, okay. Never drove him again.
No way.
And I drove him, honestly, from this church to our Broadway church, to prayer. He said, let me go. He got in the car and slept. From this, you know how short that is, what, a 5-minute ride?
Oh, he closed his eyes that fast.
Slept. Said, I never drove him again. But it was a privilege, you know what I mean? It was a privilege. Just to be around him. You talked about serving. You served in every aspect. Let's sit there for a second. What does that mean? What does that look like in this generation? Do you see that now? Because we're two old men sitting on the couch talking about it. So what do you see?
A couple things. So first of all, I want to speak to what you said about Bishop Brown. I think one of the reasons you were able to heed that advice when he says, you're not ready. I love your union, but you're not ready. It's because you trusted who you were coming to. We have to tell the truth. One of the reasons that we have generations who are uncomfortable with heeding the words of their leader is because they don't trust it. Yeah. Here's the thing. If I've watched you dishonor people over the course of these years that I've been under your leadership, I can't trust that you're going to be honorable with me. So you have some people who are not simply rebellious. I resent the idea that we are just surrounded by. I think
this is where you and I strongly agree.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to do too much on it, though.
I resent the idea that we are enveloped in a generation that is just rebellious and full of renegades.
And don't want to be corrected.
And don't want to be taught and don't want to be corrected. No, there are some. Let's tell the truth. There are some in every generation, including this generation. There are some who simply don't want to be corrected, don't want to be taught, don't want to be led, will always find an excuse, will always find a reason not to be held accountable. But let's talk about those who are actually dealing with PTSD. PTSD as a result of servitude. And so I think we both share a similarity in the sense that we were submitted to fathers that we trusted, not just with our ministries, but with our lives.
With our lives, that's so true. Yeah.
Someone shouldn't be your spiritual father because they can take your ministry to another level. You can get a mentor for that. You can sign up for a class for that. There's so many master classes that you can be a part of, Zooms that you can be a part of, conferences that you can fly across the country for that will make you better at your craft. I don't need a spiritual father for my craft. I need a spiritual father for my person.
For my life. Oh, man, that's so
for
good.
My person.
Yeah.
And for me, I always, especially within our community, the community that I'm a part of is indeed the Black community, the inner city of the Black community. And of course, a lot of individuals in the inner city of the Black community don't have present fathers. I, for one, still have a present father all throughout the course of my life. So when I showed up looking for my spiritual father, I wasn't looking for someone to supplement and substitute the dad role.
Right.
I was looking for someone who could work on my character as it pertained to my future. The preaching is easy. The character is hard.
Yeah.
I know amazing preachers.
With no character. Yeah, no integrity.
They can't get a date.
Yeah.
Because their years of service have produced ungodly character.
Yeah. I think that's something that we don't talk about enough is the trust factor when it comes to mentorship. It's easier to say you don't want to be taught when it could be, but I've also hurt you enough for you not to want to be taught by me. Yes. And I think that's something that we've got to really start to deal with.
Yes.
That we have an abused generation. And we're not producing generations because we don't have generals anymore. Generals produce generations. And when we lose generals, we lose generations. And we have good preachers. That's not what I'm saying. We have great preachers. We have innovative and creative leaders. But we don't have generals. We don't have fathers who will say, I'm not just worried about how you preach. How are you living? Where were you last night?
Let me ask you. Now we're going to turn. Let me ask you, because I hear this often where we compare the kingdom of God almost to a military aspect.
Okay.
What constitutes a general?
Someone with the experience. Someone with the when I say experience, I mean, this is just me. Mm-hmm. I want to serve under someone who has also served where I'm going. I think you said that also.
Yes.
Right? Like
yes.
Bishop Crow is someone who has served in every aspect of ministry. It's ridiculous to me that there's not one part of the church that she hasn't touched. Right. So I can trust that she's a general. She knows how to shepherd me in kingdom work.
Yes.
So a general to me is someone who has the experience.
Okay.
Someone who is willing to be followed by people. You're not really a general if nobody wants to follow you.
Oh, yeah. Listen, taking a walk.
You just taking a stroll.
You're taking a walk.
Personality, strong personality. I know that might be too much for people nowadays, but I want someone who is sure how they want to train me, sure on what they want and what they expect. I don't want an indecisive leader. Generals have to be decisive. When it's time to attack, they have what we call a plan.
Sure.
Right? I think those are some good traits for generals.
So do we believe in the idea of ministry gatekeepers?
Okay.
I'm asking, do you believe in the idea of ministry gatekeepers? I'm bringing that up because I often hear those terms used synonymously.
Gatekeepers. Okay.
On the positive aspect of it, I hear them called generals.
Okay.
When it's the negative aspect, I hear them called gatekeepers. Do we have, whether we're talking regionally based, whether we're talking nationally based, whether we're talking community based?
Isn't it really not the term, but the person that makes the term? Can't a gatekeeper be something that's positive? Can't a gatekeeper be someone who, hey, Julia, I'm at this gate as a keeper and I'm watching you as you go. I'm mentoring, I'm shepherding, I'm teaching. Why does it have to be a negative?
Fair. Very fair.
It's the person. And what we've done is we have disconnected from organizations because of people. There are people who don't like church. And that was something I had to correct myself with. My struggle was never with God's kingdom or ministry. I love ministry. My struggle sometimes is with the people.
Yeah.
And we blame God for how people behave.
Yeah.
And I think we got to start I think we don't hold leadership accountable enough.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing, what you're saying is the term gatekeeper is met with a negative connotation.
You said that.
No, I said that.
Yeah, you said that.
No, you said that because you said it could be good or bad.
It could be.
Right. So it's all about the person. It's met with a negative connotation.
Because of the person.
Fair.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it makes total sense. And so, no, not even a but. My question more so is positive or negative. Do you believe we should have them? Are they necessary?
I do think they are necessary.
I agree.
I do think they're necessary.
Agreed.
Are there people who don't think they're necessary?
Oh, a bunch.
Really?
A bunch.
So what is
their
argument?
Their point too.
Yeah, what's their argument that we don't need gatekeepers?
I want to nuance it biblically.
Okay.
Almost as if we're dealing with a Saul. Not the Saul that becomes Paul, but the Saul
that
who
tries to kill
David.
Yeah, I don't like to
who
talk
starts
Saul.
out.
Thank you.
Who starts out on a decent track, but at some point along the journey, something gets, as Judge Judy would call it, kerfuffled in the head. Something in the wires get twisted. And instead of preparing a platform, preparing a place for those that are coming behind them to shine, instead they will intentionally keep them out. A gatekeeper can either let you in or keep you out.
Yeah.
So I think your point is perfect to say it's a matter of the
but when you
person.
use Saul as the example, there's only one way to go with that.
No, because I disagree with the notion that Saul was an evil man all his life.
Okay.
I don't think he was. I think we don't see Saul turn until he receives a direct instruction from the Lord and disobeys.
Yeah. Yeah.
At that point, now we see a shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
But prior to that, we don't hear and we don't read mentions of the Lord rejecting Saul as king.
Right. Not until that happens. Yeah.
We don't see Samuel weeping.
Yeah.
I mean, Samuel wept for a long time.
Jalil, the problem is once God does reject Saul, Saul knows he's been rejected and doesn't move. And the chapters say that that an evil spirit has come upon Saul.
Yes.
And what we fail to realize is that you can be positioned, you can have authority, and you can be under the influence of an evil spirit. The Bible says that Jesus and as at the table with Judas, and the Bible says that Satan, never saw this before, Satan entered Judas. Yeah. And Jesus says, do what you're going to do quickly.
Yeah.
That you can be at the table, you can be a leader, you can have authority and still be under the influence. Not under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Some of us are under the influence of evilness. Some of us are under the influence of influence, if that makes sense.
Even Judas didn't know he was Judas.
Okay.
I mean, I think sometimes, even in our interpretations and
I'm loving this, by the way. I just want y'all to know.
Our interpretations, but not just our interpretations, but our constant involvement with the scriptures. Sometimes I don't think we humanize it enough.
I hear you.
If we are to humanize the scriptures, people become, I know people today in 2024 who had no idea in 2022 that they would be who they are today.
I hear you. 100%.
Life changes so fast.
Yes. Grief has changed them
rapidly.
And life has changed them. You're absolutely right.
Grief and growth.
Okay.
Right? Like, think about all the plans. What's the scripture that said many are the plans of a man's heart? You know, think about the plans that so many have as children.
Right.
Life presents itself and things shift in their own way. I think ultimately with the Judas conversation, Judas doesn't know. Judas is not walking around for 3 years during the ministry of Jesus plotting and planning.
Okay.
I mean, and sometimes we preach it like that. He
Okay.
was an enemy the whole time. He wasn't an enemy the whole time. He was one of the apostles. He was one of the disciples.
Right.
You know, and he walked with Jesus. And at some point along his journey, he reached the point where he didn't know to go left or right.
Okay.
And he made the wrong decision. How many people do well on their journey until they're met with a duality of options?
How about that? How many of us could have been a Judas?
How many are a Judas? How many are a Judas?
Wow. Wow.
Even don't crucify me, but even Judas, in my opinion, could have made his way back.
Okay.
He killed himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't even let the story play out.
And that's what usually happens, because Saul also jumped on his own sword.
He jumped on his own sword.
They usually do just kill themselves.
And I think my encouragement to somebody that's watching is you are going to make missteps.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to incur mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Don't allow that to drive you away from your assignment.
Yeah. That's so good.
What is the purpose of redemption if we can't redeem the worst of the worst?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think our idea of redemption is like limited to smaller or inferior penalties or sins, if you will, discretions, if you will. But I genuinely don't believe that so many of the people that have walked away from God needed to.
Yeah.
I think there was somewhere along the journey, if they had the right people around them, that is the purpose of restoration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you've got to be repentant.
They have to. Yeah.
You know, you can't be stuck within yourself and what you've done. But I think we've got to find a way to restore people that have messed up.
Yeah.
Because if we keep throwing everybody away, we won't have any more generals.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there, but some of these generals that we're calling generals, if social media were present during the genesis of their ministries, they wouldn't be generals to us.
Yeah, I hear you.
So for us to disqualify those that are current because of their mistakes and their missteps is to say there's no redemption beyond your fall.
Yeah. Yeah, and we all need to be grateful that there is redemption. Because if the bishop always says, if they pull back the curtain on what you've done and where you've been and some of where you are. So that's another thing we do. I'm not like that. What about those who are still in the midst of a struggle? God can still restore you. God can still be with you. With everything that our generation is going through, with everything from mentorship, lack of mentorship, or the surplus to mentorship, whatever state, there's people who have 20 mentors. There's some people who can't find one.
Yeah, for
with
sure.
With the state that the pandemic left the church, with the state of how social media, right? Because social media also it's killing the church.
You think so?
I think it is exposing us in a way that we have never had to deal with before. Not that it wasn't happening, but social media has shined the light on us like never before. People who have all types of sexual sins who would just be able to get away with, they cannot get away with anymore because people are posting about what they're doing with people.
Sure.
So in a social media world, with what we see in mentorship, what is next for the church? What's next for our generation? How do we stay the course?
I think I disagree with you on the fact that social media is destroying us.
Okay.
I look at social media the way I look at a gun. You can either use it for good, you can either use it to help, or you can use it to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with you that some people have completely misused it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people have fallen into an entrapment, if you will, the snare of social media.
Yeah.
For some people, social media is a snare. And not even with sexual sin, just with this conceited, arrogant, self-centered nature. Social media will reflect self if you allow it to. Yeah. And when you are constantly comparing yourself Not just, see, at one point you were just comparing yourself to the people in your environment.
Yeah. Now you compare yourself to the whole world.
Now you're comparing yourself to people from Germany.
Yeah, it's very true.
And Los Angeles and Dallas that you would have never met. You would have never known they existed had it not been for social media. But I don't think it's destroying the church. I actually have seen quite a few that have used social media to expand the church, to assist the church. I'm watching people now who were never gifted to do what you and I do, which is to stand on a pulpit. You know, we still call it a pulpit, not a stage. To stand on a pulpit with a microphone and proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. Some people have stage fright.
Okay.
Some people just don't have the gift of gab, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
That they can get behind a camera with no one else in the room and speak 60 seconds of biblical truth.
Very true. That's very true. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
And win more.
Yeah.
That you'll see that their video has 400, 500,000 views, 60 seconds. And you got 40, 50, 100 people in your church.
Yeah.
So I think social media has added an avenue of evangelism that we didn't have before. Of course, you have charlatans everywhere. You've got people who will try to jump in and monopolize it, who will try to jump in and use it to their own benefit.
As a weapon. Yeah.
As a weapon.
Yeah.
You have people who have not been healed, who would rather use their platform to spew hate and spew dissension and division instead of spewing unity. But then you have a lot of others who will use these platforms in order to bring people to Jesus Christ, which is ultimately our goal. So, I mean, I think the shift that we're seeing, it's a radical one. It's a radical one. I recall a few years ago, I was driving down to Baltimore for a convocation and had a couple of people in my car. And, you know, when you're driving extremely fast on a highway, sometimes it doesn't feel like you're driving as fast as you are.
Okay.
And I'm driving maybe 90 miles an hour, maybe 100 miles an hour. And I don't know what demonic spirit jumped in my ear to tell me to change lanes. For no reason. I just decided to change lanes. Problem is, I didn't slow down before I changed lanes. At the same speed and rate that I was driving in one lane, I quickly shifted to another lane. And that shift from one lane to another almost turned the car upside down. It was going so rapidly fast that without me taking time to ease my way into another lane, I almost caused an accident.
Wow.
And I think some of the things that we're seeing, the shift happened so quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not shifting, it's shifted.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think we've seen it over the course of not social media, over the course of the pandemic.
People were thrusted into it quickly.
Something happened 2021, like the end of 2020, very beginning of 2021, we seen a shift and we actually seen people who became so comfortable in this new space that they felt like they didn't need to return to church. So we've seen a huge shift, and I think in some cases it has hurt some.
Definitely.
In other cases, it has helped some. But one thing that I have learned about shifts is that we don't choose them.
Right. Right.
If the Lord ordains a shift, I don't believe the Lord created the pandemic. I don't think God killed people. I just don't think like that. But I do think he used it.
Absolutely.
I do think he can fit anything in his plan and work it out for his glory. And in the aspect of New York City, most of the churches that I preached for prior to the pandemic had never done a live stream.
Really?
We ain't talking about Pilgrim. Pilgrim always had the best of the best.
Is that true, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of these churches didn't even have Facebook pages.
Okay.
You had churches that when the pandemic began and everybody had to go live, they were patting themselves on the back for creating a Facebook page.
I hear you.
The culture was on TikTok.
Yeah.
Facebook, this current generation is not even on Facebook.
No, yeah, at all. Yeah.
And so we watched a bunch of unprepared people step into another lane rapidly.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to lose their momentum.
Right.
They don't want to lose the people that are at home, either sick in their mind or sick in their body. They're trying to reach their people who cannot come physically into a building.
Right.
And it caused complete chaos.
Yeah.
Okay. Videographers made more money than they ever made in their lives.
Yes. Watch this one by the camera.
Audio engineers made more money than they ever made in their lives.
Yeah.
You know, so there's some people that benefited. And then there's some people who have been conditioned for so long to experience God in a certain way that it was quite difficult for them to embrace God in a new way.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. Absolutely.
You know, Love Fellowship sings a song, "Any way you bless me, I'll be satisfied."
We don't own the rights to those songs.
Right. Well, anyway. Bless my going out, and they sing that, but we don't believe it.
You're right.
We want the blessing our way.
Absolutely.
How we envisioned it in our mind.
Absolutely.
That's how the blessing should come. And if it doesn't come like that, we will reject it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we will miss out on what is actually for us.
Yeah.
Because it didn't come in the form that we desired it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the shift is interesting. Although things have shifted, I think we're living in a perpetual shift at this point.
Okay.
And if you don't shift with the shift, if you don't adjust with the shift, you run the risk of being run over by the shift. And I know. Some people, I know, I get it. I totally understand it. But in the same way that a lot of businesses had to learn how to become digital, we have a responsibility to take the gospel of Jesus Christ into. I look at the Great Commission so differently now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to think about missions trips and jumping on a plane and walking around and actually ministering to people. But what if going to all the world meant going to all the world digitally?
Yeah.
You may never touch them, but the words that you're speaking will reach that ear gate. And he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. You know, so I think the shift has been radical. I think there's some churches that need a lot of help.
Yeah.
They need a lot of help. And here's where collaborative efforts come into play.
I think that personally is where the church is headed to, more collaboration style stuff. I really do believe that. You can see also like with all the tours that's happening, where like all of a sudden gospel artists are like, there's like 5 of them are like, we're going to have to figure out a way, how do we work together?
Because what would I rather? Would I rather 100% of 10 or 10% of 1,000,000? Yeah. I mean, this idea that I've got to be the head honcho and this has to be my show, it's got to die.
That's got to go.
It's got to be crucified.
Now that we do agree on, that's got to go.
It's got to be crucified without being resurrected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the reality is, I need you because I can't do everything. Yeah. As it pertains to like my staff and as it pertains to my team and those that I surround myself with, I don't want anybody that can do what I can do.
Right.
My goal is to staff my weaknesses.
Yeah, that's it.
Surround myself with people who can speak a language that I cannot even comprehend.
Yeah, that's it. But that takes confidence.
Oh yeah.
Right? So I mean, you can't be an insecure leader and think like that.
You can't be an insecure leader. You can't be a micromanager.
Yeah.
You've got to allow people to flow in the gifting that's been placed in them before they met you.
Yeah.
You know, so like I want to surround myself, and we should all strive to surround ourselves with people who are good at things that we are not.
Yep.
And it doesn't make me less than.
Nope. You don't have to be intimidated. You do not. You appreciate.
The biggest reality that I think many refuse to embrace that they should is you're not better, you're not worse, you're just different.
Yep.
You're just different than. And when I take my difference and collaborate it with yours, we create something beautiful that neither of us could have created individually.
That, man. That's so good. That is so good. That is so good. So that's so good. And with all that, right? Look what you created. I want to before we go, I want you to tell us about the shift.
Okay.
How it started, what it is. How did you walk up on that? Because I know some people are scared to start stuff. I'm like that. I get afraid because I don't want people to think I'm starting a church. You just stepped out. And so what is the shift?
So I, back in 2018, it was Pentecost of 2018. And right before, and I said to Bishop McDaniel, we need to do an evening service. Let's do a night service. I don't feel like, I don't want to do that. And I was like, come on, Bishop. I had this zeal. I had this fire. And I'm like, Bishop, come on. He didn't do something. And I told somebody that was there at the Lord's church with me under Bishop McDaniel, I said, we need to go start something. We need to go do something. This, although I'm being fed, and although we talked about character, my character's being built, I need more. This is not enough. A lot of people have a hard time accepting that sometimes what I'm getting is not enough. But that doesn't mean I need to jump ship and go somewhere else.
Right.
Look inside of you. You might have the answer, the solution to the problem that you've been presented with. I said, let's start something. And I prayed on it. I prayed. I wept over it just to see. I don't want to do something that's already being done. And I don't want to do something just for the sake of doing something. And the Lord revealed to me, hey, I want you to establish a monthly service, not for sinners, not for those that are on the street, but for those who are already saved, almost as a revival center, almost like a place where they can come and get the fuel and the strength that they need to carry it back to their local assignments and carry out the work that has been assigned to their hands. And in February of 2019, Second Sunday, the name of it, the original name was the Second Sunday Shift.
Okay.
We called it the Second Sunday Shift. And the Lord distinctly gave it to me for Harlem, the region of Harlem. And we started it. And from February of 2019 until this current moment, we gather once a month. And we give God everything we have with the intention of strengthening the believer. What was interesting and crazy at the same time was, as soon as we started, a year later, we celebrated the 1-year anniversary, February of 2020. And might I add, I didn't do this without the permission of my bishop.
Okay, I hear you.
Hey, this is what I have in mind. This is the vision God has given me. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He said, go, do it. 1 year later, he came in and preached my first anniversary. I felt like I had something to prove. Let me be honest. I felt like I had something to prove, but it wasn't something to prove to my peers. I felt like I had something to prove to an older generation that I heard so much negativity concerning young preachers. Young preachers talk. Young preachers don't do this. They're not accountable. They don't do that. And I wanted to prove that I can establish something on my own and still remain faithful to my local church.
So good. That's so good.
That essentially I don't have to choose one or the other, but I can embrace both and give my all to both. So even as I'm serving at the shift, as the leader of the shift, I'm serving as the youth pastor at Bishop McDaniel's church. I transitioned from being just the armor bearer to now the youth pastor, doing both of this at the same time. 2020 comes, he preaches the first anniversary, February. March, the pandemic happens. I'm a year in. and the pandemic happens. And I had to make a decision, sit here, or do I realize that this is why God established this?
Yeah.
And I took all that I had.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get a great endowment.
Mm-hmm.
We're not surrounded by wealthy individuals that were funding us.
Mm-hmm.
This was grassroots.
Hey.
And took all that I had, and we started recording services just to put online, just to put on YouTube. That wound up presenting me with an opportunity to go and be employed at a church that would have never happened had I not stepped out and did what the Lord had told me to do.
Wow.
And so all through 2020, 2021, 2022, we've continued to serve. And now we finally have reached a place where the Lord is now expanding us. So,
to other areas, right?
To other regions, in particular, not just Harlem, but also the Lord gave me a vision years ago. I had no idea he would connect the shift with that vision years ago, but with the city of Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, yeah.
We just did our first event out there March.
Okay.
We just did our first event, and I brought everybody with me. I brought all of our shifters from New York with me. We brought Darryl Walls in. We brought whoever else in, and we came with no real goal in mind except for to introduce ourselves to a place that we have no idea about. Let me tell you how I know it was God. How I knew and still know right now that it's God. I've never preached in the city. I have not one relationship in the city.
Okay.
I have no connections to the city. I don't know the culture of the city.
Yeah.
I'm a complete foreigner. I'm almost like Abraham. Go to a land where I'll show you.
Right.
No details. No reassurances. Go to a land I'll show you and I'll make your name great. That's what he told him.
Yeah.
And Abraham had to take all that faith and go to a land that the Lord showed him. And so that's currently where we are. So we're still building in Harlem.
Does this eventually lead to a church, or is it going to be do you feel like you've been called to pastor a church, or this is? I think I've asked you this before. I'm always trying to figure this out with people.
Yeah. I think you made a comment earlier in our conversation about being hesitant about starting something because you didn't want it to be misinterpreted or misconstrued as, hey, you're starting a church. And that's all I heard when I initially started the shift in 2019. The most annoying part was the idea that I abandoned my home, abandoned my spiritual father, abandoned where I was serving to go and start my own thing, as if I'm scared of anybody and I couldn't make an announcement on my own.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe you can make it,
or the idea that if God had called me to build something, that it would be the end of the world because I've been called to do something.
We'll be here for another hour.
Just because
if we get into that conversation, because we already talked about why not only do we have a hard time with transition, but other people have a hard time with our transition.
Yeah.
I mean, people will imprison you to where they met you.
That's it, man.
So if I met you as a singer, what you doing preaching?
Yep.
If let's just go radical with it. If I met you as a preacher, what are you doing being a mechanic?
Right.
As if I don't serve the God of the duality.
Yeah. Yeah.
As if I don't serve the God that can provide me with the ability of both and.
Yeah.
I can do this and I can do that.
Yeah.
I don't have to choose one or the other. And you talked about the shift of this generation. I think we've shifted there. And it's a hard transition because our fathers were taught this only. No, the only way to communicate the gospel is with a microphone in your hand, but behind a Hammond B3. What you doing with them strings?
Yeah.
You got strings behind you. You hear it all the time. Dark lights. They don't like dark lights.
No, they don't like that.
They don't like fog machines because that brings the devil in for some reason. I don't know how. But we have a hard time with difference.
Yeah.
You know? And just as much as they will attack that group attacks
Absolutely
the traditional group.
So with your belief, right?
Yeah.
You don't feel like you've been called to help establish
a bridge. Because I'm going to be honest with you. I can't see myself in either one.
Okay.
I see myself in both ends.
Okay.
There's a part of me that will always have a traditional bone in my body.
Okay.
It will never change. But my intellectual side communicates to me that if there is a generation that I've been called to reach, I got to change my tools. The message is the same. I just may maneuver it a little differently. Mm-hmm. And what are tools used for? Tools are used to build. Tools are used to build. Even when we think of constructive criticism, if it's not constructing something,
it's just criticism.
It's destructive criticism.
Yeah.
So I really do believe that's where we are, and it's why there's a need for you, where you have influence in one of the most traditional churches. And let me not just say traditional, respected. There's a lot of traditional churches that people walk past every day and don't have regard for.
Yeah, I hear you.
But you have space in an environment that's respected all across the nation. And you've been given a charge to almost find a way to keep that here while still finding a way to bring in the new wine.
Yeah.
You know, and the problem is old wine, new wine skins, new wine, old wine skins. We've been given a hard task. And sometimes, if we're going to be transparent on this podcast, sometimes it's discouraging when I listen to our seniors talk, our seniors that are honest, because they say things to me like, I don't know how y'all going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I ain't gonna drop names, but they say things like, hey, y'all have it so much harder than us. Mm-hmm. Because think about it, Pastor. It's not just a matter of lights and fog machines and a different style of worship. We now have to consider, how many bathrooms are we putting in our church? Is it for
and what type of bathroom?
Male, female, and other?
Yeah.
Binary?
Yeah.
Non-binary? And it's easy to dismiss it and say, the Lord made male and female. But if we are to minister to them, you know, a mentor of mine said to me once, you got to catch the fish before you clean it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Meaning, yeah, you can tell them what they're doing wrong and what they need to do right. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have that influence, they're not listening to you.
Means nothing.
We have a task that I think a lot of people don't speak to, and we have a lot of people in our positions that are frustrated because how do I stick to the tenets of my faith that's been passed down to me, while at the same time reaching a people that don't understand that language?
Yeah, that's difficult. That's difficult, but I think you're very much equipped to be that bridge to help do that. Yeah.
No, you're not gonna leave me by myself. We are very much that bridge, and there's so many of us out there,
absolutely,
who are afraid to take that step because you either have the generation we're talking about who don't understand the language, or the generation that we've already served and have come up in, who are scolding us for changing the language.
Yeah.
So if I do it, I'm wrong. If I don't do it, I'm wrong. What am I supposed to do? It goes back to your question about mentors, why mentors are so necessary.
Definitely.
People, maybe they haven't experienced it to the degree that we've experienced it, but people that have walked in our shoes at some point, and, young, older pastors today who at one point in their lives were younger pastors and had to take over congregation where all the people there were their seniors. 30-year-old men that were taking over congregations where the average age was 55 and 60. How?
Right.
How did they do it?
Right.
What did they do? How did the likes of a C.H. Mason in the midst of all of the racial tensions of that day even build a Mason temple?
That was such a culture, yeah.
How does a Roy Brown buy a property all throughout Brooklyn? Like, they've had to experience some transitions. So let me ask you, do you feel like our generals, our seniors, our superiors, those who have come before us, do you feel like they share their history? Not just their wins. We know their wins. Yeah. But do you feel like they share their failures enough?
Maybe not. Maybe not.
I think about it often. Because when I listen to some of them casually talk and they may share it, I think to myself, I've known this bishop or this pastor for 10 years and I've never heard them talk about the time they were denied for the loan. I never heard them talk about the time that the church was split. We know your wins, we know your successes, but there's something about your failures too that are just as necessary for the testimony. Yeah. We overcome by blood and by the words of our testimony. The testimony is only a testimony because you can pretty much say it was bad and it became good. The bad turned into good some way, somehow. The bad transitioned into good. I feel like if those who occupy the seats today, those who we regard as mothers and fathers of our faith, who have that wisdom, the young men have the strength, but the old know the way. Yeah, that's what the Bible taught. If they would communicate that in a more digestible tone and manner, I think we wouldn't experience all the pitfalls that we do.
Yeah, man. This is so good. I could do this all day. We got to get out of here.
We have to. Sorry.
Oh, my gosh. This is so good. Those of you who are watching, share out this broadcast. I want to see you put those comments, the things that we're talking about. You agree, you disagree. I feel like we're going to get a good amount of comments on disagree and agree in this thing. We appreciate you so much, man. Thank you for stopping through. Tell us when the next shift is.
The next shift is in the month of May. We will be back in Harlem, May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Come out of all of them restaurants. Come out of them bars. Make your way to Harlem.
Where can we find you on social media?
You can find me all platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, at Jaleel Spence. At Jaleel Spence. You can find me there. Man, I appreciate you for allowing me to come today, man. Yeah. I think these conversations are so necessary.
Definitely.
And I just want to give you your props before we end.
It, bro.
Just for being a voice, crying in the wilderness like John. I think that what you're doing and the foundation you're building is really going to be something that so many people will be able to look at years later. Again, because you're a part of something that's established, but you're also putting a little razzle dazzle on it, Y'all see this razzle dazzle? You're putting a little razzle dazzle on it. So I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
We're praying for you. We're with you. Whatever you need. Like I told you from day one.
Yeah, you did.
I'm with you.
You
like
did,
we're in this together. We need each other, and one can chase 1,000. Yeah. But when we get together, we could do a whole lot more.
Definitely.
Please disagree in the comments. I can't wait to argue.
And he will go back and forth with you. Listen, I love y'all so much for watching. Until next time, pass the email. This is the podcast room. brother, man.